This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview.
Joining us today is Oliver Friesen, the CEO of Golden Metal Resources, following updates from their Pilot Mountain project, where the company has discovered a considerable potential for the industrial resource that is garnet. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Oliver, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Mark. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you, Oliver. Very good indeed. So, of course, this news is, maybe a bit left field. I mean, garnet, first of all, I've heard of it. Probably other people have heard of it. But what exactly is it? Why is it so special?
Yeah, so it's out of left field in the sense that we didn't realize potentially how much was there. We always knew there was garnet at Pilot Mountain. In fact, one of the two deposits which have been defined so far is actually called garnet. So left field, and once we kind of got down and started looking at the numbers and speaking to some specialized, we really realized this is a much bigger opportunity than we first thought. But what garnet is, it's a mineral that's commonly found in skarn deposits. Mm-hmm. The key characteristics of it are that it's quite hard. So there's a Mohs hardness scale, diamond being the hardest mineral out there. Garnet is quite high up on that scale, so it's very hard and very abrasive, which means it's really good in abrasives. So when you're looking at sandpaper, abrasives that they use to clean pipes in the oil and gas mining industry, that type of thing. That's where abrasives are really commonly used. So that's what garnet is mostly used for. Obviously, there's gemstone quality garnet as well, but that's not what we're looking at here. We're looking at industrial abrasive garnet.
Okay, and I noticed from the RNS that sort of test reports have suggested the garnet constitutes 40% of the mineralized interviews in the known areas, and you commented by saying you believe that Pilot Mountain has taken another significant and unexpected step forward. So this is because, as you mentioned earlier, you knew it was there, garnet, but you weren't sure exactly how much. But why is it so exciting? Again, you're not the kind of person to make those sort of statements unless you really do feel it's worthy of it.
Yeah, well, there was multiple reasons why this was so exciting for us. Number one, as you mentioned, is just the quantity of garnet. And once we started to look in potential pricing, and on top of that, the garnet landscape in the U.S. being a net importer of garnet, there's a few other factors. One that I thought was interesting was in the abrasive space, what a lot of companies or users of abrasives will do is they actually utilize a byproduct of the oil and gas industry called silica slag. Okay. It's a much cheaper version than garnet being sort of a premium product. But what's happened recently is the silica slag has actually been deemed to be quite environmentally disastrous. Okay. And on top of that, it creates this silica dust, which is quite an issue. So a lot of companies are switching over from that very cheap silica slag to a more premium product, which is really increasing demand for industrial garnet. But that was the supply demand setup of garnet, industrial garnet in the U.S. got us really excited. Obviously, the quantity of garnet got us excited in the potential pricing. But moreover, and I think the thing that really piqued my interest was how the garnet extraction would fit into the flow sheet of a project if it were to go into production. Mm-hmm. And the reason being, the garnet, when we first looked at it, was actually an issue because it's quite abrasive, as I mentioned. So if we're going in and grinding, so what happens is we take the rock out of the ground, we crush it, and then we send it to a grinder where it grinds it down to a much finer size. And actually the garnet was a problem for us because it was in such a high quantity. And on top of that, the hardness of it would affect the grinding equipment. So you'd have a lot more wear and tear on your grinding equipment before you float and get the tungsten out. But looking at and speaking to specialists on how this would fit into the flow sheet, we go back to the start again. So we blast the rock, we crush it down to a certain nominal size. And the great thing about garnet, and particularly the garnet that we have, is that it's slightly magnetic and has a much different density than the other minerals that we're looking at within these type of rocks. So what that means is the garnet, after being crushed, so blasted, crushed, we can then gravity or magnetic separate 40%. Let's say that number is 40%. We believe it to be around that number. Some tests indicate potentially even higher and closer to 50%. But what that means is about 40 to say 50% of that material, that garnet, we can then remove very early in the process via either gravity or through magnetics, which is a very cheap and efficient way to produce certain products. And then on top of that, not only are we removing it from the circuit, reducing the wear and tear on the later components, but then we have a saleable product.
Yeah, okay.
40%, let's say 40%, let's say, that's the number that we think it could be. That product moves very early out from the process. And then you have effectively garnet that you can go and sell. So there's lots of implications. That's why we discussed, that the potential economics could be really shifted here by the fact that we can remove that, sell it, and then it lowers our OPEX when we produce our tungsten, copper, silver, and zinc. So lots of reasons to be excited about that.
Indeed. And that sounds very interesting. So you've got the 40 to 50% there. That would, once it's been separated, it's done. It's the product as it is. It doesn't need anything else. It can go. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. So I presume you've got to do a bit more work here then. Presumably you've got to test the sort of magnetic separation there, or indeed the gravity separation. You did mention as well in the RNS that the potential economic implications cannot be understated, but you are looking to hire a garnet specialist for project-specific analysis, and then, of course, finalising drill permit applications to further explore the potential of the project. So what is to come here, specifically with regards to the garnet side of things, in terms of doing extra work to see how you can test some of those separation methods to get a saleable product, but also exploring for more garnet, and then we'll touch a little bit on the tungsten at the end.
Yeah, of course. So there's lots of things we need to do now. Obviously, the potential quantity here we've realized is significant. The way it fits into the flow sheet, we've done that work. We've looked into that with our metallurgical specialist to see how this would all kind of work together. And the facts that I gave you earlier about removing it early, we've done the work to sort of quantify and understand that that's what that process would look like. The garnet specialist, what they kind of work on is understanding the garnet market moreover. And for instance, who the potential purchasers could be of this product. And also on top of that, given the specifications of our product, who would be the buyers, what kind of price could we fetch, those type of things. So it's more of a marketing specialist we're looking to bring in, because the quantity is potentially so large here to really understand how that would affect the market. And on top of that, there's a lot of other factors, including, as I mentioned, there's the use of garnets increasing. The global players is sort of shifting. So how does this project fit into that kind of landscape, and what kind of product could we produce, and who would ultimately be the buyers? We believe it would be a product that would stay in the U.S., potentially export as well. So that's what we're looking to get some more answers on. In terms of where it fits into the flow sheet, we have a good handle on that. But as we push the project forward and into some of those major development items that we need to check off here as we push this forward, what we'll be doing is future drilling. When we are drilling, we will be looking a lot closer at the garnet composition. A lot of the historical drill logs mentioned the amount of garnet. They quantified it, said there's 40, 45, 50% garnet in this mineralized interval. But what we can do now is with future drill holes and even past drill holes, we can go and assay those. And there's special techniques at the lab that they can utilize on the core to tell us, okay, this is the exact percentage of garnet in the core, and here's the breakdown of the different types of garnet. So marketing specialists to help us understand the opportunity here. And then as we push this project forward, we'll be quantifying that 40% that we mentioned to really understand where the garnet is located, what the different types of garnet are, and then we can use that and tie this kind of whole process into the future economics of the project as we look to establish that.
Okay, well then, so the next question really is, what about the original sort of tungsten that the project was all about? I mean, what does this project become now? A garnet project, a tungsten, a both? I mean, you mentioned silver and zinc credits as well. I mean, you can get a bit lost in everything that's going on, can't you?
Well, yeah, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
The reality is, when these projects do go into production, everything that you can extract and sell plays into the economics. Obviously, the tungsten is the focal point here, and this is still a tungsten project. And we're so confident about the tungsten landscape here and how important this particular asset is for the national security of the U.S. and the Western world at a time where we need domestic sources of these important input defense and energy metals. So it's certainly a tungsten project, but we had to look at some of, back of the napkin calculations as to what the potential, in situ metal value of the garnet could be here. And it's significant. And so that's what has us so excited here. So it's a tungsten project. That's what we're really pushing forward. And a lot of these, potential non-dilutive grants to the U.S. government, that's focused on the tungsten that we have. But it's a great problem to have, the copper, the silver, the zinc, and now the garnet, which looks to be very significant. So all really important parts of what will be a final economic study we look to produce here. And garnet will certainly be a big part of that study.
Well, just a final thought then on the final economic study, because it does bring the next question to my mind of what comes next here at Pilot Mountain. I mean, do you look to drill for a resource of garnet, or does it all fit into a bigger picture here? How do you sort of go about moving this project forward, bearing in mind the tungsten would be the sort of the main focus? Presumably you want a resource on that, but then considering the garnet credit as well.
Well, the great thing is the garnet is associated with the tungsten. So anytime we're in a mineralized interval, we're in the skarn. The skarn is what bringing all these fluids up. So anytime you have tungsten, you have copper, you have silver, you have zinc, and you have garnet. So they all kind of come together. So what that means is as we push this project forward, we drill one interval, and that will give us information on all 5 of those different commodities and where they're located. So just a matter of now adding that to sort of our data flow here as we're collecting more data, ensure that we're collecting the necessary garnet data to allow us to incorporate that into future studies. So where do we go from here? We alluded to in the announcement that we're just finalizing our drill permits now. There's 5 very, very exciting targets on Pilot Mountain where we think we could materially increase the contained tungsten, copper, silver, and zinc. And garnet, once again, will be associated with those intervals based on the geology we have on the property. So next steps are, we're going to get these permits finalized here and sent to the BLM office. We'll receive those permits, and then obviously listeners could probably guess what the next steps are going to be. But in terms of what we want to drill, there's really a dual-pronged approach here. Obviously, the development of desert scheelite is very important, and a certain amount of drilling will be required to upgrade the resource that we have right now. But on top of that, as I've alluded to and mentioned many times before, it's the exploration that really has us excited here. So those main 5 targets, we will be permitting drill holes into all 5 of those targets. Many of those, and I encourage listeners to go back to some of the original RNSs we put out early in our company's life cycle back in probably June 2023. There's some great targets there, and we are really excited about going and testing those and seeing what those are. And the garnet's just going to be along for the story now, and we're going to be testing for it. And just another sort of feather in the cap of what is just a fantastic project and one we're really excited to have in the portfolio.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Oliver Friesen, for giving us that update today and for your time. The CEO of Golden Metal Resources. Looking forward to continuing following the story across all the business and activities that are going on.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Let's chat again soon.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like, or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.